we're on the 15-year anniversary of SummerSlam 2005. So I got to ask you guys, what was the second best match of SummerSlam 2005?
You know what? I'm going to go with Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero, because in hindsight is better than it actually is, because, we're talking about the 15-year anniversary, right? And obviously, as we're taping this, we're in the week leading up to SummerSlam 2020, and you have basically Rey Mysterio cornering Dominic, right? And Dominic was almost the central figure of this match between Eddie Guerrero and Rey. And yes, most will argue that this went a little long. It had its fair share of snafus. Obviously, the fan running into the ring, Vicky being late, almost doing what was it? A Papa Shango, so to speak, being too late on the gun in terms of her time cue. But I mean, again, Eddie's not here. Eddie is one of the most beloved, figures in all of wrestling. It's one of those where, I mean, I personally have only cried over 3 wrestler deaths, and that would be Owen, Andre, and Eddie. And I wept when Eddie passed away, and it made it even more crazy that I was literally miles away from the Cow Palace where he won the title from Brock. So I think maybe it wasn't as great then or as fondly remembered, but 15 years removed, you've got, Dominic playing a central role in this year's SummerSlam, Ray's back. You've got, Eddie, Vicky being in AEW, Shaw doing her stuff with WoW and had her own WWE developmental deal herself. So, I mean, there's a lot to unpack when you just get into the nuts and bolts 15 years removed from that. And obviously Eddie's unfortunate passing within years of this match taking place. So that, maybe it's a sentimental pick, but that's my second. It might even be tied for my first and second best match of this particular card, but that's debatable.
So I think this is going to be a second best match first, where Adam and I agree. I think Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, the ladder match for Dominic's custody, was the second best match of the night. And because you belabored the point of how it was, I wouldn't call it a botch fest, but there were a couple botches that were smoothed over by the fact that these two just went so hard and had such a great match. But because you covered most of that, I'm going to point out matches that didn't live up to what they could have been. Chris Benoit, Orlando Jordan was only 25 seconds, so we can't really include that. Edge, Matt Hardy by a knockout was a singles match, but it wasn't a no DQ match when those two were clearly ready for a no DQ match, and they only gave them 5 minutes. Kurt Angle, Eugene. Kurt Angle came in as a heel. They wanted Kurt Angle to be a heel and Eugene to be a face, and the crowd wasn't having it. There were a lot of matches that could have been better than this match that weren't. Adam made all my points about the match, so I just looked to the card.
So is it safe to assume that you guys both think that the best match of the entire night was Hulk Hogan versus Shawn Michaels?
Yeah. Okay, there we go.
Wow.
Disagreements.
Wow. I need to put up a graphic of what's the word? Woods. What's the thing that you just mentioned? I forgot you said, Steve.
You'll get there.
Roasting woods. We're going to be
roasting
some woods right now. So, what was your best match in your? What do you think was the best match, Adam Woods?
Batista, JBL.
That was a come down match.
Yeah, it was definitely a come down match. But here's the thing. So I really bought into both. JBL's ascension. I love that gimmick. Whether you call it the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, JBL in the middle, and then later Alberto Del Rio. It's essentially the same gimmick, but each particular performer's particular spin on it, right? So I love that, and I love the turn. The turn was so organic. JBL kind of cutting his hair during the last days of the APA, and
He cut his hair like a year earlier.
He was world champion.
But even still. So this is why this match meant at this particular time, it meant so much to me, right? Where obviously, so I talked about JBL, right? Then you've got, Batista on the other side, and I mean, he's the world heavyweight champion at this point. I mean, the first time that we saw Batista on SmackDown, he was Deacon Batista, right? So he was somebody who made the climb through evolution and whatever to become world heavyweight champion. And again, this is somebody that when you talk about pushes, what's the difference between championships and pushes? Batista both had the championship and the push, right?
So
where others did it.
So I'm gonna oversell your reaction. I'm gonna oversell your response here in honor of the greatest match of that night, which was Shawn Michaels, Hulk Hogan. But in the process of overselling, I'm just going to say, were you truly able to suspend your disbelief at any moment that JBL was going to win the title?
No. But the story. But here's the thing. So it's that JR, kind of, or Bruce Pritchard kind of analogy. Then the bell rang, right? How many, MMA, boxing, pro wrestling fights, matches that happen that sell you on the hyperbole, right? And then when you get down to the nitty gritty of the match, the pay-per-view is already bought. The money, the checks are already cashed, right? So regardless of the I guess the
so you're saying it was match of the night because they brought you in the door?
More so than Michaels Hogan, for sure.
Really? The first time meeting of Shawn Michaels Hulk Hogan wasn't what sold you on this whole card?
No, not at all. Because, first off, I mean, this is total disclosure. I'm a Bret fan. Bret is what brought me to pro wrestling. Bret versus Savage.
I will point out. I think it was the Observer. You could find an Observer reported from the week heading into the SummerSlam and the week after the SummerSlam that said they were trying to the point of flying Bret Hart to Washington, D.C. for that, and it just didn't work out. So the Bret Hart was supposed to be a part of this Shawn Michaels Hulk Hogan match. This time next week, we'll know way more because we're shooting this before Bruce Pritchard and Conrad Thompson do a whole podcast about the show.
And just to kind of add on what you just said, Steve, it was the Monday Night Raw before this SummerSlam where they were in Montreal and Shawn Michaels had that, in my opinion, epic promo about, teasing Bret Hart. And literally, like, I've never heard a pop like that loud or one of the biggest pops I've ever heard on TV when they had Bret Hart's music play. So I do kind of, I never heard that story before, but I do kind of believe it a little bit just because of the promo that we saw from Shawn Michaels the previous Monday on Raw.
And it would have been par for the course with the way you use Hogan, that around even by 05, the way you use Hulk Hogan best isn't actually a one-on-one matchup. So involving Shawn Michaels, involving Vince McMahon, involving a lot of other characters would have made the most sense to me. It stands to reason to me that I'm sure Bret Hart, because Bret Hart by that point, his sourness with the company had subsided enough that maybe he was going to come there and do some business. But We're here to roast Woods about JBL Batista being the match of the night, and I'm taking nothing away from JBL or Batista. JBL had an incredible run on SmackDown right before, clearly the future of that business, John Cena, beat him at WrestleMania 22. Also at WrestleMania 22, Batista had a meteoric rise from dude who stood next to Randy Orton and Triple H to dude who won the Royal Rumble and beat Triple H at WrestleMania.
Talk about 22 or 21?
21.
21,
sorry.
21 is where, yeah.
Sorry, Hollywood. Yes. Mm-hmm. Staples Center. But yeah, that I think both of these guys had like a great headwind heading into this match, but this match itself, bell to bell, it was all but impossible to suspend your disbelief that that Batista wasn't going to be a 1-year, 2-year champion.
So I got to ask Adam, now, I'm not trying to incorporate if you're a Bret guy or if you're a Shawn guy. I love both, but I'm a Shawn guy. But with that said, do you think part of the reason why Hogan versus Shawn was not your number one or maybe even number two because of that kind of overselling of Shawn Michaels? Like, oh, back rake. Oh, geez, you just did a backflip over the top rope. Oh, punch to the head. Oh, let me sell it like I just got ran over by a pickup truck, Was that some of the reason why maybe you thought it wasn't in your top two matches of the night?
So, the whole lead up, right? And again, maybe it's just my, being partial to Bret, right? But you heard of, Bret's stories and his column with the Calvary Sun and all that stuff about his inner workings with Hogan and, at WrestleMania 9 and all of that, right? So you knew what you're getting there, right? So, and then, Shawn and his, deep in the trenches of his addiction and what have you, and the stuff that he would pull, right? And for very many people, he went to vintage HBK for that promo, for that, kind of lead up to that match with Hogan, right? And he was, the Pied Piper against everybody that wanted to say exactly what Shawn said to Hogan, but never had the levity to do so, right? But again, this was, it's oftentimes alluded to as the lesser of the two evils. In my mind, they were equally as evil, and I didn't give a damn one way or another. It was just, again, Hogan, backstage politician, and again, if anybody was the heel out of the two, right, Hogan wasn't a sympathetic figure going into that. I don't think so. Not, at least not to me. Maybe I completely read it wrong, and it hasn't been the first time that I've done that. Total disclosure. But with that all being said, again, so you've got Hogan who just sandbags. Shawn Michaels, HBK, who kind of sandbagged for his friends, right? And, his clique mates and whatever. And you're seeing the both of those, right, kind of cut together. So, yeah, I wasn't in it. And, again, I'm a fan of the technical aspect of wrestling. I love, what is it? The Steiners and the Gan Corf, the Cannon.
Furnace and LaFon.
Yeah.
Furnace and LaFon.
Right, exactly. Furnace and LaFon, right? So that is what appealed to me. So Hogan wasn't that. HBK was more so than that, obviously being a student of Jose Lothario and that Texas, kind of scene. But with that all being said, the antics really took away from me, and I really couldn't buy into Shawn Michaels at post WrestleMania, the Iron Man match with Bret.
Really? Have
100%.
You seen? So Shawn Michaels, I keep bringing it back to WrestleMania 21, but WrestleMania 21 also has Shawn Michaels, Kurt Angle, which I consider one of those two's very best. You couldn't buy into him there?
I didn't get to buy into my feelings towards Shawn Michaels. My negative feelings towards Shawn Michaels didn't dissipate until Michaels and Flair. I thought
really?
That was yes, and that's how deep rooted that. Like, I would change the channel when Shawn would come out. As a kid, I was that much of a Hart, Bret, Bulldog, Anvil. My greatest point of my fandom for professional wrestling was, Bret and Owen on top. But most people think that was the dying days because you had TL Hopper and Dwayne the Clown and all that stuff, Duke the Dumpster Droese and whatever. But to me, that was some of my fondest memories, as a kid, and would have the ice cream bars of such people.
I am shocked. I'm perturbed. But again, this is what we're here for. And if anybody wants to, whether agree or disagree with your love for Shawn or hate for Shawn or love for Bret, whatever, I mean, it's okay to like both. But let's be real, Shawn's the best wrestler of all time. But where can people find you, Adam Woods?
According to Woods, on everything except for Twitter, where I'm Adam K. Woods.
Ooh, that's confusing. I'm at Steve Kaufmann on Twitter, almost exclusively. That is KAUFMANN.
Hey, it's Christy Olson. If you like this video as much as I did, give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends so they can join in the wrestling chatter too. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and follow the show on Twitter at TW Chatter. See you next time.